All right, can you guys hear me? All right. I've never had a problem being heard. Rob Armstrong just reminded me of that. So, hey, first of all, it's great to be here. For those who don't know me, Command Sergeant Major Jimmy Wilson, the Aviation Branch Command Sergeant Major for at least another week. So it's a privilege to be here today to talk to you about Army aviation and the challenges we face in the future and what we're trying to do to get after that. Some of what I'm going to talk about today, you heard the branch chief talk about this morning. That's because we have obviously the same challenges we're getting after, but the challenges that you as the sergeant majors, the enlisted leaders, and some of our industry partners that we're trying to engage here this week, we're getting after some unique challenges on the enlisted force are facing out there. So as you can see on the slide, we're going to get after some of these topics right here. So before we get started, I want to introduce some folks here, some of my teammates from the GOs have what they call the Aviation Six-Pack, and it's pretty unique within the Army Aviation Branch that all the aviation GOs, they talk every Monday morning. It's on the calendar. Every Monday morning they get up, they talk, and they talk about the challenges that cross the branch. Well, we have what we call the five-pack, if you will, and we don't talk every Monday morning, but we talk as much as we can because we're usually out and about trying to get after challenges. So I'm going to go around and talk to, and at least introduce the ones that are here and tell you the names of the ones that are not. So Damo AV is Sergeant Major Mike Telesco, soon to be Sergeant Major Ruben Davila from going to soon to leave the 82nd Combat Aviation Brigade. Our SOAC is Command Sergeant Major Rob Armstrong. Please stand up, Rob. Mike Telesco will replace him soon. PEO Aviation, Sergeant Major, where you at, Carlos Loaiza? Right in front of me, right? All right. The AMCOM Sergeant Major Brad Smith. Brad, stand up, please. All right. So these are the nominative aviation sergeant majors, and they're out every day working for the soldiers of the branch. Now, I'd like to introduce my team if I could, because we got some very, very talented USACE sergeant majors that work hard every day at Fort Novosel to get after very, very challenging problems. Most of you know them all, but I'm going to go ahead and thank them here personally. Sergeant Major George Ackerman, the new training sergeant major. Most of you know him. Sergeant Major Andy Nichols, way back there in the back. Andy's done a lot. Most of you know him. You talk to him quite a bit, right? They work very, very hard. Most of you know who my replacement is, but I'm going to have him stand up. The training sergeant major, the next branch command Sergeant Major Kirk Coley. All right, I skipped over my other team member. Where's that? Charles Hancock, National Guard. We couldn't do what we do without Charles Hancock. Sorry, Charles. All right, so we're going to get into the meat of the brief here real quick. You know, this year I wanted to change it up a little bit. We usually do a panel, but what I wanted to talk about is the future. And sometimes we get bogged down a little bit. We get in a room, get a bunch of sergeant majors in a small room, and we talk, and we focus on problems. Enlisted soldiers, NCOs, we are programmed from birth to seek out problems and solve them. Well, that leads us down the path of always looking for what's wrong. And sometimes we have to reprogram ourselves to seek out and find what's right. And we do a lot of things right in Army aviation. And I challenge all of you to go back to your units and write down everything that you do right. All right? That's the challenge when you go back. Don't just go back and look for wrong. There's plenty of that too, but there's plenty that's right. So let's get after that. So you saw this slide earlier. I love this slide. The commanding general came in. This is what we do for the division. We see, we strike, we move, and we extend. What does that mean to you? You heard him say this morning. If they need us to see what's over the next ridge line, we're going to go see over the next ridge line. If they need fires, we're going to provide precision, lethal fires. If they need to get to the target or a position of relative advantage, we're going to put them there. And God forbid, if they are wounded on the field of battle, we are going to get them and bring them home. Does anybody dispute that? That's what we do. That's why you work so hard. That's why your soldiers work so hard. Never forget that. Why do we do it? Somebody said this morning. As a matter of fact, I think it was the Surgeon General of the Army said this morning. Why do we do it? I wrote down his comment this morning. It's very simple. To deploy, to fight, and to win. That's why we do it. Sometimes we go to work and we get bogged down in the day-to-day, mundane stuff that the Army requires us to do. The bottom line, we put this uniform on to deploy, to fight, and to win. Let's remember that. Aviation and large-scale combat operations. This is a busy slide. These are our core competencies. This is what's is written down, and you can study. We teach this, to the new the captains over in the captain's career course at Fort Novacell. So what's the so what of this for NCOs in this room? Bottom line, NCO's role in LISCO is NCO's roles for the history of the Army. We drive readiness. Bottom line, we train soldiers, we drive readiness. How do we do that? Training management. What are we not good at? Training management. I challenge all of you to go back to your units. If you don't know how to go find it, Google 8-step training model, right? Let's get back to the basic, blocking and tackling. That's what we've got to do. We have got to get back to training the basics, right? We are not good at that anymore. We lost that. 20 plus years of protracted combat operations. We had a lot of people doing a lot of stuff for us. We were falling in on fixed base operations. That is not going to be the future. We have got to get back. We've got to get our skills back. We've got to get our skills back. Forward arming and refueling points. One of the reasons I wanted to do this brief is we're already starting to see the training that we're going to have to use to get to where we need to go in the future. I was talking to the 82nd Combat Aviation Brigade leadership, and they were planning multi-state air assaults that were going to require them to do 4 or 5 FARP operations along the way. All right, that is requiring multiple FARP equipment sets. They don't even have the sets. Shop sets, kits, they don't have them, right? So they're having to solve those problems. Raise your hand if you think you've got the same problem. You don't have the shop sets and kits, right? How do you solve those problems, right? How are you going to put out multiple FARPs? How are you going to put out multiple maintenance nodes? That is the future problem. That's why we're talking about that here today. That is the LISCO problem that we're all going to have to solve, right? The future battlefield has pushed us further away from the actual targets. We'll be so far away now that the air assault, the ranges that we're going to be fighting from are going to require us to have to put out multiple FARPs to get to the target and back. Which, obviously that's why we're talking about FLRAA, speed and range. Speed and range is the name of the game now. I don't think I moved my slide, did I? All right, so what are we doing about all of this at Fort Novacell? Well, .mil-PF. If you've been to the Sergeant Major Academy, you probably wrote that down in a notebook somewhere and you don't even know where that notebook's at anymore. As we just talked about, 21 plus years of sustained combat operations, COIN, and we were falling in on a lot of, now we're moving to LISCO. I'm gonna have to put my glasses on, y'all bear with me a little bit. How do we get after this? Well, our doctrine provides us with a playbook. And Sergeant Major Ackerman wrote this note down. I thought it was pretty profound. It's not his words. He stole them from someone else, so I'm gonna steal them from him. In no other profession are the penalties for employing untrained personnel so appalling or so irrevocable as in the military. General Douglas MacArthur. The importance of training also requires the importance of proper training. It's not practice that makes perfect, rather it's perfect practice that makes perfect. It is, after all, the seemingly small disciplines and the commitment to high standards that makes us who we are and binds us together as a force, an Army, in peace and in war. It's Dempsey, General Dempsey, 2009. We must ensure we adapt our training in CPXs, CTCs, warfighters, the COE, and our schools to be perfect for the Let's Go fight. Those are all true statements. We have got to change. We have got to adapt the way we train, and it starts in the institutional force, and we must proliferate it out to the operational force. Now, one of the things we wanted to put in here that we get asked a lot out on the out when I go and talk to the operational force is the FDU. We just talked about the .mil PF, right? One of the things we're looking at is, as we also talk about training, the way we train, the way we fight, we've got to change the force. Well, we've got a FDU for 2030 that is going to fundamentally change the structure of Army aviation. The Combined Arms Center Large-Scale Combat Operation Capability Study found that Army aviation lacked attack reconnaissance capacity, air assault capacity. The FDU is designed to break modularity, which is necessary to get after capability gaps. The requirement is no growth. So we had to find a way to fill capability gaps in a zero growth environment. That's very, very challenging. So the design includes 12 purpose-built cabs, divesting a modular structure, support the tailored to their divisions, 2 theater enabling cabs, 1 air assault cab, 3 light cabs, 6 heavy cabs. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to dissolve the GSABs. We're going to take the structure of the GSAB and we're setting up 2 air assault cabs. One of them may be called something different. We're still trying to figure that out. All right. And as I talk about this, keep in mind that this is not a done deal. This is still working its way. It's all pre-decisional. It's in the process. Let me put it that way. We're still waiting on the R-Struck and all that to be completed. The bottom line is we're trying to redesign Army aviation to meet the challenges of the future. There'll be time at the end to answer some questions about this. Let me go to the next slide because it's got some of the so what in here. So as you look at this slide, it's got a little bit of where we're going to steal some of the aircraft from. All the way down to the Gray Eagles. We're going to go down from 12 to 8 Gray Eagles. We're going to take Apaches from every cav squadron in the Army, and we're going to move them around. That's how we're going to make more units. We've already taken a lot of Chinooks to move them around to build the air assault division or the air assault cab. So at Fort Campbell, y'all have seen that. So if you're Fort Campbell, you've certainly seen that growth already. So that's the way we're getting after this. Now, a lot of people ask about the National Guard. The National Guard is, the Compo 2, Compo 3 is a separate force design than what this element is. But they're on pace to have to change as well, and we'll see their force design come out as well. George, did I leave anything out? One of the other things we want to talk about is REARM. Some of you have lived REARM, and we wanted to talk about it a little bit. The intent of REARM is to provide predictability, soldiers and their families, align units regionally, provide habitual relationships, synchronize all 3 compos, optimize modernization while not jeopardizing unit readiness, build cohesive units that are highly trained, disciplined, and fit. Some of you understand, it's a challenge. We're trying to do it, obviously, in a fiscally constrained and a resource constrained environment. So here's a little bit of what the so what of this is. We're trying to, the timeline. We want you to understand that as you move into the modernization phase, obviously resourcing is going to peaks and valleys with resourcing. In your modernization, you're not going to get manned. You're not going to be required to fly the same hours. You're not going to be required to have the same readiness requirements as a unit that's over, you know, in the training or the mission blocks, right? The mission phases. It's designed to allow you to dip down. Now, the problem is, I think the 10th Cab has already tried to, living through this, it's hard to tell a division commander when he wants his aviation assets to go fly that, well, sir, we're in modernization. We don't have the flying hours for that. But they're working through that and to try to get us to where we don't relive the APRGen issues where we were moving aircraft all over the battlefield or all over the continental United States, and we're going through that debacle. We're going to give you time to modernize your fleets, give you time to train your crews, and we're not just in this constant churn that was so difficult back during the height of the global war on terror. That's what this was designed to do. Habitual relationships and geographically aligning our combat aviation brigades is also the way of the future. And we're going to get there. We're going to keep fighting this fight and get there. I'm going to talk a little bit about future vertical lift, obviously, right? I mean, hey, if you hadn't seen that aircraft out on the floor, most of you have. I encourage you to go by and talk to the people over at the Bell booth over there, because it's pretty impressive if you go ask the right questions. If you want to talk to the maintenance side over there, most of us, we stopped by there the other day. The capability of that aircraft is going to solve some of the problems that we have with survivability, speed, and range. That aircraft did over 300 knots when it was being tested. And if you're to put that in perspective, when we were flying combat missions in Vietnam, RP inbound, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Lewis, I see you sitting back there, they were flying 80 knots RP inbound to the target, and in Iraq, we were flying 80 knots RP inbound to the target. There's been no significant leap in technology until now. We're going to be flying a whole lot faster in that thing. We are moving. This is leap ahead technology that you get to see on the floor, right? I know there's a lot of naysayers because it is not a helicopter, and we are helicopter people in this room right here, right? But you have to change the way you think, and we have to get in here and figure this thing out, because we are soldiers, and we eat dirt, and that looks too much like an airplane. The bottom line, we're soldiers, and we're going to have to figure out how to eat dirt with that thing. So I encourage you to get out there and figure it out. The bottom line, the number one, as the CG said this morning, the number one let's go gap is FARA, the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft. Reconnaissance and security. We got to find a way to defeat integrated air defense. That's why we started off with that video, and I got to thank the former Branch Command Sergeant Major Jim Thompson. He had that video made and sent to me before he moved positions. And as you saw on that, that's what we call the ecosystem, the FARA ecosystem, where you're going to launched effects, and every one of those little launched effect unmanned aerial vehicles serves a purpose. And it went out and it found targets, and then it destroyed them, or it sent that back to a shooter, and a shooter destroyed it, right? And like the CG said this morning, shame on us if the first contact is made by a human and not one of those things, right? That is the future. We got to get out, find, fix, so we can destroy the enemy. That's going to lead us to more questions that really the meat of this discussion is going to be here in a minute is who? Who are we going to do that with? What MOS? What MOS is going to crew that aircraft that's sitting on the floor? What MOS is going to load launched effects? What MOS is going to put the payloads that those launched effects can carry? That's the discussions that we're having at Fort Novosel. And at Redstone Arsenal every day. Sergeant Major Loaiza and his team, Sergeant Major Smith and his team, and then obviously Sergeant Major Coley, and it's just going to go on. But we got some really smart people. But the bottom line is, we could talk about it all day up there, if you will, in the Death Stars. But the real answers are going to come from the operational force when it's time to do it. So we need the smart people thinking about it there too. And the challenge is going to be Apache and Black Hawk and Chinook. We're going to fight and win the next battles and the next battle and the next battle with those aircraft as well. So we're going to have those things, and thank God we are, because I love all three of them. They're fantastic aircraft, and they will win the next battle and the next battle. Does anybody doubt that? They're incredible aircraft. So we've got to find a way to sustain those well into the future, which means we've got to continue to give you world-class maintainers from Fort Eustis, and you've got to find a way to use the AMTP to continue to develop those maintainers as they along their path as Army maintainers. So we want to kind of changing gears here. We want to talk a little bit about enlisted soldier management and what Sergeant Major Ackerman put together here, and put his OPFD hat on, because he's still doing a little bit of both of that, as he's the training sergeant major and the OPFD sergeant major right now, is a little linear timeline to show you a little bit. One of the terminology changes we've made is we're calling it broadening and sharpening. And what we want you to understand is we want you all to broaden, but more importantly, we want you to sharpen your skills. So that's what we're doing, is we're constantly looking at our NCO academies. We only got 5 weeks in our NCO academies. Somewhere along the way, we've eroded our NCO academies down to 5 weeks and 1 day, or our largest POIs in ALC and SLC. That's not a lot of time to sharpen someone's knife, right? So we're talking about how do we get after, at ALC, getting back to skills-based POIs, and at SLC, getting back to more leader development. But the bottom line is we've got to find a way to continue to sharpen our skills out in the field. So when I say 5 weeks, we cannot solve leadership skills or leadership issues or teach people to be better leaders and solve all the problems that we have with our NCO Corps at Fort Novosel and Fort Eustis. I just said we've got 10 weeks and 2 days in the entire NCO's career. That's all we've got in the institutional force for NCOES. So who's got to make the NCOs better? You do. All of you. You've got to invest in them. You've got to give them your time. Now, what Sergeant Major Ackerman put here is just some of the things that they can do, the jobs they can hold as they move along their career that will help them achieve their goals for promotion along the way. These slides will be available to all of you if we haven't sent them to you already. I think all the brigade sergeant majors have them already, all right? So share this slide with the soldiers. We're just trying to inform them. Also, y'all all know they can go get these online at any time if you're doing NCOPD. Now, obviously, we're not going to end this brief without talking a little bit about maintenance and the AMTP. I've spent roughly 30 months bludgeoning you all over the head talking about the AMTP, which has been my #1 priority as the Aviation Branch Command Sergeant Major, and it will remain my priority until Kirk and I pass the branch colors at roughly 8:45 on May 5th. And then Sergeant Major Coley will set his priorities. I'm going to tell you right now, I believe in that 100%. Whether you do or not, I believe in it. All right, it was started years and years and years ago, and it is the right thing to do for this branch. The fact that we cannot see our capacity as aviation maintainers, can tell who's signed off on what, all right, we had to fix that, and we have the fix. Now, we owe you more than that, and we're trying to fix that as well with a program that would allow you to see yourselves instantaneously. And if you know what I'm talking about, it's the MRL. And I think we're close to getting that to a combat aviation brigade for testing. When I say close, we just got to write a check, and I think we'll get it done. So When we talk about aviation maintenance training program, every cab I go to, that's the first question I'm going to ask. And I'm going to walk up to the first soldier I see and I'm going to ask them this question: where's your AMTP folder? And I would say 90% of them look at me and go, what? Now, AMTP folders come from Fort Eustis with the soldier now, and Fort Huachuca. They will come with a folder. Every cab sergeant major, every battalion command sergeant major should be asking that question: where's your folder? Just like when an aviator shows up from Fort Novosel, the first thing their SP asks them is, where's your flight records? If we're going to change the culture of this branch and the AMTP, your question should be, where's your folder? I don't care if they're coming from AIT or they're coming from another combat aviation brigade, where's your folder? We can't change the culture unless you do it. That's why we started at Fort Eustis and Fort Huachuca. All right, I need your help. It's the right thing to do. I ask all of you, do you think it's a good thing? Yes, sir, it's the best thing ever. I go to your cab and you're about 50% solution on getting it done. All right? We, like I said in the beginning, we drive readiness, we also drive change. So let's drive change, let's get this done. All right? The National Guard in some ways are leading change on this. We go out to National Guard units, they're getting after it, right? I went to 82nd Combat Aviation Brigade. The brigade commander has an outstanding policy on this. She defined what every MOS in her combat aviation brigade would do to progress at every step. And then she allowed her battalion commanders to say, I'll add to that. I can add to that, I can add to that. But she set the minimum requirement, right? Because she can. And she did. And it's outstanding. So I was blown away on that. Her battalion commanders were getting after it. So I use them as an example. They were the latest cab. I've been to a lot of wonderful cabs that are getting after that, right? But we need to continue to drive it, because momentum can die off quickly. So continue to drive the AMTP. It is the right thing to do. The MRL, if you haven't seen it, please go by. There's a booth. There's a company that is demonstrating it on the floor. It's called People Tech. Go by. They will give you a demonstration of what it can do, the capability of it. We are going to try to get them to do a 1 year. I don't know what we would call it, demonstration, a pilot, thanks Kirk, a pilot at the 101st Combat Aviation Brigade, because their proximity to the 160th, who is already running that program. And then we're going to try to write a requirements document, and then we're going to compete it and see if we can get it to every unit in the Army. That is our goal, right? It's going to be, and we got the branch chief on our side. He is all for it. So we got some things we got to do to get it across. We're talking years, not months, just for expectation management. But it's the right thing to do for our maintainers. Okay. Now we had Sergeant Major Ackerman put together a couple of talking points here. We're talking challenges. We talked, and I hit on a couple of these already. Maintenance, we're not getting in sets and reps, that we need to build proficiency. We all agree on that. I talk to all of you when I come through. First of all, you don't have enough people, so you have to be selective where you put them. All right, we're fighting the battle. We fight the battle of taskings and our soldiers going to being put on taskings and sent off. But I also challenge all of you to make sure the right soldiers, that if you got taskings, you got taskings. But are you putting the right soldiers on taskings? Maybe the soldiers you just got from Fort Eustis are not the right ones to put on that tasking, because they need to get back on the aircraft as soon as possible, right? So they don't lose proficiency, all right? But the CG and I teach a class called the Senior Leader Course to every incoming division commander and deputy division commander, and we tell them that their aviation soldiers' weapon systems, their toolbox, and that by taking them, if they want to know why their NMC time is 15%, it's because they've got 50 soldiers on a gate guarding Fort Bliss, constantly. And that's probably what's driving their NMC times up as a example. Probably not a good example, but an example. And all of you know what I'm talking about. So, and then they write it down and shake their heads. Everybody's got to pay their bill to the division. Divisions have to run, and it takes manpower to do it. But the bottom line is we could probably spread that out a little bit differently. The future will require us, back to the AMTP, the if you think about this, we got to be able to build small teams, and a lot of them, to be able to do multiple things. That's what I want you to concentrate on. We got to be able to have well-led small teams, multiple small teams, to go out and get after LSCO. The MTP will allow you to do that, so start thinking about that. Think about running phases. Think about predictive maintenance. That is the future. We're going to have to get away from TBOs and large, phases that take 2 months to do. That is going to be the future. Logistics. That's why we're not going to be able to do phases like we've done in the past. Everybody here, I looked over and saw Sergeant Major Williams Green. Some of the more complex training exercises we're doing are stretching our logistics to the max. If you're in PACOM, you know exactly what, you've been dealing with that for years, right? That is a long stretch for logistics. So learn from each other. The challenges that are going to be put on logistics as we go out and spread our force as thin as we've ever been spread before. We're not going to have LSA Diamondback and all those things we had in Iraq. That is not going to be, they call those things targets. We just can't do it, right? It's going to have to be on-time logistics is what we're going to have to get to. And so we got to find a better way to fight, which means we got to have better mechanics that can troubleshoot better to get the problem right the first time with the right part, right on time, so we can get our aircraft back before they're the target. That means we got to train better mechanics. Y'all see where I'm going with this? I keep beating it down. We have got to get back to the basics, right? When we started the war, I would tell you, I think we had some of the best helicopter mechanics on the planet. And we lived off of that forever. And then when we had the force restrictions downrange, we lost that. And we didn't get to sets and reps. And now we're trying to build that back. That means you're going to have to get out there and push it. It's going to require you to get out there and push and get your sergeant majors and your first sergeants and your sergeant first classes out there to push that. I want to talk a little bit about some of the, I'm going to skip over to the CTC lessons learned. And some of you have heard this, but I wanted to bring it up because we were reaching out to our CTCs. Battalions are not proficient for tactical ground movements. Units underestimate the complexity of jumping TAAs and rarely conduct planning and preparation. CAB level expertise is necessary to integrate enablers and condition setters at division level attack missions. So what I'm telling you is, as you all know, and this is not new, I think probably as Brian Houckson back there, I think we talked about that I was coming in. We've lost a lot of our skills, and that's why we're going back. So reach out. I ask all the CAB sergeants, reach out to the CTCs, get the lessons learned. They're more than willing to give them, or bring them, or send your teams out. We're sending cadre from the NCO academies out to our CTC so we can capture lessons learned to put into POIs. So we can try to teach your soldiers when they come through. But at the same time, you can do that as well. Well before you go, to try to start getting better at this, right? It sucks to go to, excuse my language, but to go to CTC and get scuffed up like that when you could learn in advance how to get after that. So that's a real quick, a brief about the way we see things at Fort Novacell, what we're trying to do to get after it. All we do all day, every day, 365 days a year is think about these problem sets that we just talked about here. And we could talk all day in depth about some of these challenges. I hit the wave tops because we wanted you guys to understand where to come to if you got questions about some of these things, and who to talk to. That's why we introduced everyone. And I'm going to go ahead and hit this next slide here. I'm going to open it up. We have microphones. And we're going to entertain questions. I wanted to go quick because I wanted to allow you to ask questions. And we wanted to this Quad A, I specifically tailored it to give you maximum time to get on the floor, right? If we're talking about the future of Army aviation is your soldiers, is on that floor down there, right? So get out there, and the challenges that we just talked about were the wave tops, really, of some of the challenges you all know, but some of the answers to those challenges are out there on that floor. So go see if you can find them, and then bring those back to the leaders that I introduced, and let's see if we can't start working some of those challenges. Because if we don't try to get the answers, we'll never find the answers. I think we can all agree on that. So I'll turn it over for questions to anyone. Yeah.
Sergeant Major assigned 96 ASP. Just for clarification, when you talk about getting back to the basics and fundamentals, I just want to be, when you say that, what do you mean? Are you talking Common Core task, or are you talking like aviation specific task when you say get back to the basics? Because we've atrophied in both.
Yeah, that's what I would say, both. But I think, hey, great question, Sergeant Major, but the bottom line is this. When I look out at soldiers these days, let's talk maintainers, right? I think we've atrophied on our, let's call Common Core maintenance, right? Just basic aviation maintenance, right? But also basic fieldcraft, aviation maintenance fieldcraft. I mean, I get that from you. You know, I grew up in the 160th. I ain't done a lot of fieldcraft in my career. Let's just be honest, right? But I go out and talk to your soldiers, and they tell me, soldiers don't know how to do basic TAA. And what I was getting at is I can't teach that at the level we need to teach it at my NCO academies. So who's got to teach it? You do. But the problem is most of you don't even know it anymore because we haven't done it in 20 plus years. So how are we going to solve that problem, right? We've got to figure that out. So I am more worried, though, right now about basic aviation maintenance. That is what keeps me up at night. That's really what, and I talk to your CAD commanders, and I talk, you know what? Go talk to your TIs. I mean, you're an ASB, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Your TIs will never, they won't, and your maintenance test pilots, they'll tell you the truth. I guarantee you, you go down and spend some time with them, they'll probably scare you half to death with what you're not being told. So that's really what I'm getting at when I say that, is basic aviation maintenance. How many times are they going out there and saving people's lives and you're never knowing about it? And so that's really what I'm saying, blocking and tackling. We've got to make sure the soldiers are on the aircraft. But more importantly, that the trainers are on the aircraft with them. So I challenge all of you to this. We've got the AMTP, ML0 through ML4, right? Go out to the first phase you see when you get back to your hangars. Walk up and find out the makeup of that team. How many ML0s, how many ML2s, how many ML3s, and how many ML4s? That's why we did it, right? Watch and see how many are ML0s. And how many are ML1s, ML2s. We didn't build it so you could go up there and go, there's 9 ML0s on this aircraft. Well, what are we doing? All right? Use that program. Build your teams using the AMTP to do the right thing with it, right? That's what we're trying to do. Go back and start looking at that. Walk around. If a brigade command sergeant major will walk through the hangar and start putting their thumb on people, things will start to happen. If the battalion sergeant majors will then drive that down, the first sergeants will start doing it. That's the only way we're ever going to drive the change. But the point being is, just figure out that even a phase team. I went to the 82nd Cab. You know, it was my last actual cab visit, and I was pleasantly surprised because I walked up and I said, I want to know the makeup of this entire phase team. And I was pleasantly surprised. ML2, ML3, ML0, 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 ML1. And then they actually had way more people on the phase, which I was suspect of. And so my first question is, you guys built this for me, right? Because I'm here visiting. And they were like, no, Sergeant Major. No, we just don't have enough phases at the moment. So we're doing AMTP progression. And I was like, man, perfect timing, or you guys are just doing the right doggone thing. It was just a great, that's what we got to do. If we're going to win, that's what we got to do. So great question. All right, next question. Sergeant Major Chambers.
Hey, it's just a comment real quick for all your sergeant majors, first sergeants out there. So Wise SMA told me one time, it was actually SMA Daily, hey, there are sergeant majors that need the Army, and then there are sergeant majors that the Army needs at the E9 and E8 level, all right? So to Sergeant Major Wilson's point, and to that, I don't know who that guy was over there, ASB Sergeant Major. Hey, Sergeant Major, especially at the battalion level, if you're not down in those platoons, because that is your job, is to grow, mentor, and counsel platoon sergeants at the battalion level, and down at that company level, that's where all your soldiers are out. If you're not doing that, then you're failing, all right? If you're not checking on that every day, or at least 2 or 3 times a week, I mean, that's what you get paid to do in Army aviation. So just remember, there are people who need the Army, and then there are people that the Army needs. Over.
Come on, y'all got to ask me some questions. We got like 15 minutes left. Let's go. Go ahead, Caleb.
Sergeant Major, looking at the slide that had the timeline for the soldier, if we go back to where they're getting selected for Sergeant Major, I think it was at like 16, getting feedback from something, but I think it was from 16 getting selected for the Sergeant Major Academy. Most of our master sergeants are getting selected at that point at 16.
I can't.
Most of our master sergeants are getting picked up at 16, so they're getting looked at to go to the academy in between 18 and 19, coming out of the academy at 20, and then we don't get to put them into a command sergeant major spot until 21, 22, if we're lucky. Is there any kind of is that going to be the model that we need to go to? And then how's that going to look for our master sergeants that are sitting at 17, 18 years now?
Trying to, yeah, go ahead, George.
Yeah, can you repeat it real quick? Because I didn't hear the first part.
More into the mic, is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Get it real
All right.
close.
I was about to fall off the stage listening to you.
All right, so if we look at the date for the Sergeant Major Academy selection being at 16 years, 16 years as Sergeant Major Academy, so that's where I was looking at. So that's where you want the first sergeant? Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, that's for the diamond. That's the time.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Did we answer him? Okay, I can barely hear him. All right, next question. You ain't got no question? No?
Yeah.
How you doing? I'm Rowdy. Sergeant Major, one thing that me talking with my folks at the cab is, have we ever thought about getting an SME grade plated for each battalion to make it easier for us to manage the AMTP program?
That's a great question, Rowdy. The answer is yes. We think about it all the time. The problem is, for us to do that in a no-growth environment, we got to take it from somewhere. So my question back to the cabs is, where do you want me to take it? And if I'm just going to take it from you anyway, why don't you just grab somebody and put who you want there? That's kind of where we've been at, right? I've got to pull that person from somebody, because to move them around on your MTO or a TDA in a zero growth environment. So why not allow you the flexibility to use who you want to accomplish that anyway? It's kind of where we've been. Yes. And all the cabs kind of working that problem a little bit differently, and so the AMTP a lot of people at the aviation branch are struggling with the lack of standardization within the AMTP, because we're standardization people, right? That's what everything is, well, we intentionally wrote the AMTP, was intentionally written with maximum flexibility built into it for the battalion commanders. And we're reluctant, Sergeant Major Coley and I have talked about this in depth, we're reluctant to take that away from them. You know what I mean? Because, we can sit up at Fort Novacell and write all these things that put you guys in a corner, and then you just don't do it anyway. So we just try to give you guys maximum flexibility. That's one of the things we're reluctant to do, is start building structure based off a TC. And so that's kind of where we're at, Rowdy, but great question. Go ahead, Q. Or whoever's up.
All right, hey CSM, Sergeant Major Scott from Aviation. Can you go back to your force structure slide? Like this right here.
Okay.
Hey, what I want to know, Sergeant Major, is where do your smaller units that aren't the divisional assets fit into your large-scale force change right here? How do we play a fight? Because we're on an island, a lot of the smaller units, and how do we fit into the bigger aviation scheme of maneuvers?
I can't answer that. Yeah, so see if maybe George can.
I'll try to answer this for you. Okay, so this was we talked about LISCO, and we talked about how we're going to fight LISCO, and used to have the BCTs as a unit of action. And how we get now, we're going to division and corps as unit of action. So I know you're in Japan, so you're asking about a TDA assigned unit, and so this is based on TOWs, not TDAs, okay? And so it's going to be tailored towards the TOW units and the cabs. And how do we get those cabs to be able to fight with their divisions and their corps and at echelon? We have to tailor each one to go back towards that. That's why we developed the light, heavy, and then the expeditionary style, right? And so, and again, what CSM would mention about is we got to do this in a zero growth environment. We're not going to produce more aircraft. I would love to reach out to Damo AV and say, hey, build me more aircraft. But it's just not in the bank right now, especially as we're looking to modernize and go to the fleet. So we had to do it within our constraints of what we have right now. So you can see on the right where we took some aircraft from some of those heavy divisions, the lift capacity from the heavy divisions, built more attack capacity, and moved the lift capacity to the assault battalions, and then the 101st, so we can meet that goal of doing one BCT movement in a period of darkness. Okay, does that kind of answer your question a little bit? Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I say, this is the force designed to get after. Yeah. All right, next question. I think, would you have one, Bryce? Go ahead.
Sergeant Major Bryce Mannington, 3rd Battalion, 160 Command, Sergeant Major. Question for you. 30 years coming up, you got about one week left in the seat. What was your greatest accomplishment as a USACE branch Sergeant Major?
Oh, that's tough. I don't know. Maybe not getting fired. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I can still get fired. That's a true statement. You know, here's the unique thing about USACE, not to give up my speech, is, I don't know where I heard this quote, but for most of the branch or former branch sergeant majors, I think it'll ring true to them. You'll be amazed what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets credit. Because the bottom line is, what you start at this level, you will probably never see to fruition. So there's a lot of things that we started that I will never see to fruition. That it will start branch sergeant majors later. Like the AMTP is not done. I didn't start it, and I won't finish it. The MRL, I think getting the pilot approved by a couple of, getting General Francis to agree that maybe we probably needed to do that was probably my greatest achievement, because he was not a fan of it when I first got there, but we were able to win him over. But I think, I will explain this to you. And most of you know this, but I spent my career, it was very unique in Army aviation, where I spent it pigeonholed in one place. And I would say this, I don't think that's probably the right answer for any aviation soldier, or any soldier. Because as I left the formation, you realize this branch, we've got a lot of constraints, and we got a lot of resource challenges. What we don't have is a lack of talent. I can guarantee you that, right? We don't have a lack of talent in this branch. It is everywhere. And so the more I've moved around, the more I realize I probably missed out on meeting a lot of that talent and getting a chance to work with that talent. So my deal is get out there and meet as many people as you can. You know, one of my greatest, I want to say achievements, one of the things I got to work with Charles Hancock and get to know the National Guard. I didn't have a clue what the National Guard did for our Army or the reserves before I became the branch sergeant major. I had no clue, right? But you look what they've done for our nation over the last 2 to 3 years, right? So that's what, I don't know if I've got an achievement, but I'll tell you what, I've learned and gained so much from it. It's not only made me a better soldier and a better sergeant major, it's made me a better person. So I don't know if I can answer that question, Bryce. Yeah.
So I can add to that. I think one of the things that Jimmy probably haven't even thought about or taken credit for is, I don't think any of the former branch sergeant majors has had to deal with a pandemic during their time. So being able to continue to train soldiers and deliver readiness during the midst of a pandemic is something that, I don't think he's thought about and the impact that has on all the units that are out there that were receiving soldiers during the height of a pandemic. So just figuring out how we're going to continue to train, how we're going to continue to develop NCOs and put out NCOs back out to the force, which the easy answer would have been like, hey, we're not able to train. But, Jimmy figured out how to do it virtually and how to, isolate soldiers and being able to train soldiers and get them back out to you. So to me, that's a significant accomplishment that, again, that's placed on the branch sergeant major that, he hasn't really even fathomed that, hey, that's something that he had to do during his time. But I'll just add that to you. Thanks.
I appreciate it, Kurt. Yeah, I'll tell you what. So we'll go ahead. Any more questions? Anybody got anything? That's Bryce. What you laughing about? I'm gonna put you on restriction. Hey, so I'm gonna go ahead and wind it up. Hey, I appreciate it. Like I say, next Friday, Kirk and I will swap out. Couldn't think. I mean, you all know Kirk Coley. If you hadn't got a chance to meet him, then please come up here and get a chance to shake his hand. It has been an honor and a privilege. Somebody I get asked all the time, hey, how you like your job at Fort Rucker, now Fort Novosel? And I was like, that's the hardest job I ever had. And it just blows people that I work with for years in the 160, they're just blown away by that. And I was like, it's the most rewarding job I've ever had, but it's also one of the toughest jobs I've ever had. It's busy, but I tell you what, it is a worthy cause. It is a challenge every day. I would do it again, right? I'm glad I don't have to do it again, but I would do it again. It is a tough job, but I can't think of no better soldier to do it than Kirk Coley. So I leave y'all with Fly Army, above the best.
Hey, since we're not going to be there next week, because we have other, we'll call them obligations here in the Far East and stuff like that. But a wise man by the name of Colin Powell once said, hey, that we need to understand that we as citizens and as a government in any community throughout our country have no greater obligation than to educate those that are going to replace us. So since, I worked under you before as a battalion sergeant major, and now as working, again with you in this capacity as a brigade sergeant major, that's been your focus from the get-go, is that you focus on the future and you know that, hey, I'm going to be replaced one day, so what do I do to help drive change in the future? So thank you for all the change, driving culture and all the changing and helping us become better future versions of ourselves. But it's funny that you mentioned, say, you didn't start AMTP, and you're not going to finish it, but one thing that you all did know they did, he helped drive for the wings, for you to get future wings, is you have to have certain levels, ML3 and all that for those wings. So a little something from us to remind you of the efforts that you put in AMTP, a little set of wings for the Philippines.
ML4. Thanks, Don.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Marcel. Thanks, brother. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Better get ML4. You don't get the wings.